A flag map of Europe, but each flag is determined on which country they share the shortest land border with. So Italy has 2 micronations inside of it, but because the Vatican City is smaller than San Marino, that's why this flag is here. Didn't even realize that Ukraine's shortest land border is technically with Slovakia. Countries that border micronations are more than likely gonna have that flag, so France is with Monaco. I actually don't know what flag this is over Spain. It's not Andorra right here. Oh, that's with Gibraltar, but technically Gibraltar isn't a country. That's just a British overseas territory. But the thing everyone's most confused about, Russia having North Korea. Remember, they border 14 countries in total throughout all of Europe and Asia, and they technically do have a very small sliver of land with North Korea. I'll never forget the fact that there's only one country between North Korea and Finland. This is how many people can hold a conversation in English. Okay, how is the UK and Ireland not at like 99%? I mean, 5 to 6% is still a huge amount of people. A little bit more understandable that France is only at 40% in speaking English. I didn't think Spain would be lower though. They're lower than Portugal. Germany is actually surprisingly high. I didn't think they'd be over 50. I know that in Sweden, they're taught both Swedish and English at a young age, so they are really good here. Maybe Austria does something similar because they're surprisingly high as well. The lowest though is in Hungary. Only 20% can hold an English conversation. I wonder if this is going to increase or decrease over the years. Global beer consumption starting in the 70s, Eswatini is really high up there, just randomly like that. They are an African nation just surrounded by Europeans. Then they started dropping in the 80s. So it's Germany, Australia, Ireland. Not super surprised. I mean, I feel like Germany should be the #1 contender here, right? Gabon really jumps ahead there, and oh, they're out of it. Oh, the Czechs do love this stuff too. Oh, maybe Czechia will be the only one to stay up. I thought the Irish were more of whiskey type people. It's 2010, and Czechia still has Germany beats, but Germany's still, oh, they're dropping. They're still dropping. Austria is trying to hold it together for them. This is the current rankings we've got right now. Kind of surprised to see Poland in 3rd. Biggest thing from this animation though is that per capita, people are just drinking a lot less in general. It's almost been cut by half. Interesting to see certain countries do better in some decades. Maybe they were going through some stuff. The number of Ukrainian refugees and where they're going after the Russian invasion. Might be surprised to find out that Russia is receiving the most amount of them. One of just many reasons for this is keep in mind the country of Ukraine has a lot of chaos happening. And if you're a person just trying to escape all the battle, you can go into Russia. Also keep in mind a large percentage of Ukrainian population density is right here on the east. So of course some of these people are going to go to the nearest neighboring country instead of all the way back out this way and then get to Poland. And Poland is receiving the 2nd most refugees. Germany's surprisingly high considering Ukraine doesn't actually border this country. Is this Spain with over 100,000? That's also pretty far. Here's actually the full map situation for even some of the smaller countries. Interesting that Belarus is possibly getting less than Moldova. Wait, how many people is Malta taking in? The size of the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. And unfortunately, every time I see these types of maps, it seems like it's just getting bigger and bigger. But the garbage concentration changes frequently. So in a weird way, like a hurricane, there's like an epicenter, like an eye of all the garbage. It gets thinner, of course, along the outside, and the more in you go, it's a lot denser. Is it not possible for all this stuff to just crash straight into California? I live right by the beach. This wouldn't be good. I have noticed it does just kind of sit there and follow currents along this side. Hawaii should probably be a little bit more worried. There's actually even a North Atlantic garbage patch too. It's just probably not quite as big. Greenland without the ice would actually reveal an enormous lake. So if Greenland was actually green, we'd get a bunch of water with it too. But the lake only formed because of the ice itself that actually forms the water of the lake. Probably shouldn't be rooting for this sort of thing, but this would make this island pretty dynamic. It reveals a bunch of mountains and grass and things. Maybe that's why Denmark's deciding to keep it. They out here playing the long game. Europe at night in 1992 versus 2010. So 1992 is a very specific year because that was just after the Soviet collapse and all these eastern countries weren't behind the Iron Curtain. But of course with time, rural areas just become a lot more urban, as well as you can see the cities themselves continuing to expand all over the place. There's actually so many different areas we can focus on here. I wonder what this thing looks like now. The proposed borders for Turkey, drawn by US President Woodrow Wilson. This was during World War I or before the Ottoman collapse. So the winning Entente powers had planned to carve this thing up. He had only proposed Turkey to be about this large, not even like half of what they have. And this neighboring country was proposed Armenia. Oh boy. As well as the Bosphorus Strait would just be an international area. Interesting that there was already a proposed Jewish state. It's like 30 years earlier. It'd be British influence though, whatever that is. And then a return to some historical empires like the Kingdom of Hejaz and some Gulf Sultan states. It might not have been quite as large, but something looking like this, the proposed Wilson's Armenia. I know we make memes about it all the time, but it's crazy to think that like in reality, people were just like drawing lines on a map. Like, yeah, that's now gonna be a thing. The original range of the Venus flytrap, and it's surprisingly not as large as you'd you'd think. I mean, these things have become so iconic now. It's not surprising that humans are so mesmerized by it. Could you imagine being the first dude to come across this stuff? They legit look like aliens. There were a couple other corners in North America where they used to exist, but they went extinct. It makes sense that they're just kind of from such a small area though, considering how weird they are. They're weird because they're unique. Man, if I was North Carolina, I would throw these things on their flag, wear it with pride. Divorce rates per 100 marriages. I actually did not think the divorce rate would be so high in Russia and Ukraine. This area of the Balkans though, with among some of the lowest 5.9%. Wait, is it bad that I'm like surprised about that? Like, I understand 1/4% of all marriages ending, but 5? I mean, France over here with over 50%. Same with Spain and Portugal. Ireland is super low though. This part of Central Europe, pretty low as well, like 1/3. Probably so many different explanations for this. Here's the top 5 countries with most divorces in a year, but this shouldn't be super surprising considering population, although Russia is like abnormally high. India is not even on the list. Wait, I must be reading this wrong. There's no way Portugal is at 94% divorce rate. The United States and their preference for certain curse words. So for this first word, we have poop that starts with S, and it's mostly a thing along the coast here. They tend to use it more often than the other states, but not quite as much out here. Is it just like an old school thing or something? I don't really know. That's the only thing I can see. The East Coast and the Deep South agreeing on something. A very similar map for heck. It's really just a southern thing, which that actually doesn't seem surprising. These places are very religious, so they're going to use this word more often. The F word, which is just used everywhere, except for like in the heart of the country, weirdly. And finally, crap, which I don't really think of as a bad word. Look at this hot spot in Utah. Why are the Mormons like this? Oh, that's why all these places were using the S word. These places are trying not to use that word. They use crap instead. That's interesting. Finally, the B word, which has a really similar border to what we were just talking about. The S word that isn't crap. Okay, so these people have a tendency to use certain curse words together. There were a lot more words in this map that I could have looked at, but I'm really pushing my luck by doing that. Global leader approval ratings. At the lowest end, we have Macron in France, only at 32% approval, and a lot more disapproval. Third place, Joe Biden. He's just barely behind Trudeau in approval. Didn't realize Japan would be so low, only at 45%. Then we have leaders that are more on the upper end, Sweden, Switzerland, Australia. But number 1 is Modi from India. 74% approval. How do you even get that high? I thought on average, it just usually sits around the 40s. I mean, that's at least the case for us in the US usually. It's interesting how you can have low approval ratings yet still win elections. Like, what's even the point of these polls? Some former and current European crowns. I think the most identifiable for me is this Pope one. There's the German imperial crown, also the crown of Austria. Oh, the Bavarian crown. I've seen something like this before. I do like that you can still see what they look like. The crown of the Holy Roman Empire, but I feel like that's not even as iconic as the Prussian crown. I forgot how cool these are, like crowns in general. Wait, actually that Holy Roman Empire crown looks pretty cool in real life. I want a crown. How do you make a crown? And how expensive are these? Besides the fact like of their historical value, because I'm sure that really pushes the price up. I think that these things were only worn by these huge leaders from history. The crown jewels, or the English crown, is worth 4 billion? Wait, how is that even possible? Okay, definitely like the historical impact has got to be raising that thing up. I'm sure they got some cool jewels in there, but 4 billion? Sometimes it's hard to review these maps because I've seen so many meme versions of it, but I do gotta admit, the Russian overlay here is pretty amazing. Russia is the largest country by land area, and it does stretch throughout all of Africa. Also pretty amazing to see how much space Alaska alone takes up. So easy to forget how big that state is. It really gives us a lot more land area versus China because, I mean, I think otherwise we'd be about the same. Europe looks so tiny. Flat map projections once again distorting what is actually real. Most maps make that continent so big. Brazil is also pretty large. Didn't think it would take up this much space. Finally, India, which is like really just the Horn of Africa. Okay, I weirdly still find these maps a little amazing, even if they're kind of memes to me. How the Earth will look like in 250 million years. Okay, that actually doesn't even seem that long, to be honest. Why did I think it to be another billion years before we get into another Pangea? Oh man, the Indian Sea is going to become the new Mediterranean. There's also going to be a ton of new landlocked countries. Gonna hope that we won't be around to see this because we'll be in space. Either way, we probably won't be around to see this. Once again, New Zealand's still going to be kept off maps forever alone. Comparison of the AI text-to-image generators has become really popular recently. So DALL-E versus Stable Diffusion. I personally prefer DALL-E here. This one looks a little bit less real. Although Stable Diffusion looks like they do better with faces, this looks horrifying. When it comes to unicorn skeletons though, Stable looks a little bit more horrifying. I could see that being a real thing. The Taj Mahal in India made of sandcastles. This looks, oh, of cheese. I was gonna say, that looks like cheese. Stable here just put cheese on the outside. I don't think that looks like cheese here. Finally, Santa Claus staring at, I don't know how Mrs. Claus is gonna feel about this. That's much more stable. stable. Wow, so they both do different things really well. Oh, and to think one is free and the other is not. I'd say Dolly does a bit better, but I mean, this other one is keeping up. Are we even gonna need animators in the future? Can we just have the AI pretty much animate an entire movie? I'm sure it's only a matter of time. The Tour de France winners' average speed. Didn't realize the Tour de France was going on for more than 100 years. There were breaks being taken though during the World Wars. I mean, technically France could have still held them because they were still good during this event. Bit more understandable why they couldn't hold it during the WW2 though. So you can actually see the winning times begin to really increase during the 30s, and then they continue to increase in the 50s, but unfortunately all that red are known dopers. Wait, so they started doping in the 60s? So this has just been like a part of the sport. They seem to have stopped in the 90s, maybe they were testing a bit better. But what's so fascinating about this is that the dopers weren't like way above everybody else. Although of course it's just known. There might be some things we don't know. And then throughout the entire 2000s, there's just this solid line. Do we want to make a guess on who that probably was? Does it technically still stand today, or did they remove it? But ever since it got found out, so as of the more recent years, they haven't been doing it, as what we know. And it looks like there is a new top speed. That's like one of my favorite documentaries, is that Lance Armstrong documentary about the whole thing.
And big thanks to my patrons.
Isaac, I guess.
Australia's Sussiest, Chungus.
Aushtin, Powersh, Fazha.
ASUSOmen.
aPhatNarwhal.
My name is Joe Biden. I love being Joe
Fatnuts.
Biden. Drew's Argentinian grandpa.
Cowboys 83.
Bringbackpolandball.
Barnsky W.
GoodOldRyah.
istoledrewspetdog.
Jakov. Bruney.
LuxembourgLover.
MarcoHindera.
Ortin 5610.
Philipp RF.
Phresh Animations.
RyeThePie.
The Mexican
Why am I doing
760.
this?
And the Conqueror.